clarify for people, and not even for the people affected, just as importantly as a leadership team, defining what people's jobs are going to look like in this post AI world. And once they have AI tools, what will their job look like? What will they do with that extra time they have? What will they do to replace all the heroics and tribal knowledge that they've become so dependent on in terms of their perceived value to the organization? So that's what you have to look at it, is from that angle of how do we settle people down and give them clarity of what their job descriptions are going to be, what their job roles are going to be, and ultimately giving them that clarity in most cases, I think, is going to create a positive impact on resistance to change, because people usually don't resist change because they're bad people or because they just want to be difficult or they want to sabotage the project. You occasionally have that, but that's not very common, actually. The more common and more difficult resistance to change is the good intentioned resistance to change. People want to do well, but then once you introduce risk and doubt and lack of clarity as it relates to their job, they are going to start pushing back, because they sort of move down in Maslow's hierarchy of needs from, actualization, self-actualization of how to make the company better. Now suddenly they're in survival mode. They move back to the base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to where now they are more worried about their own job security, their own perceived value to the organization. And you've sort of forced them down Maslow's hierarchy of needs back to that basic level of just basic survival within the organization, versus where you want them, which is back up at the self-actualization phase. So the best way to get them back up to the self-actualization phase is to say, let's provide that clarity and help them understand that their job isn't going away necessarily. Assuming that's true, their job isn't going away. They're going to be better at their jobs. They're going to be able to do more meaningful work. And more specifically, what does that mean? You just have to be clear and specific about how their jobs are going to change. And usually that will calm people down for the better.
Yeah, our next question today is Palantir AIP the dark secret that lets businesses avoid the pain of upgrading or switching ERP systems by adapting to even the oldest legacy and mainframe systems?
Yeah, and I saw that question on social media. They said AIP. I think they meant API, but I'm not 100% sure. But I'll talk about Palantir just in general then, because yes, Palantir is a way that you can integrate legacy systems without necessarily having to replace them, and that's the dark secret that the industry doesn't necessarily want you to know in the ERP space. And we'll talk about that actually in the last segment of today's show when we talk about cutting through the ERP AI hype. One of the things we'll talk about is this fact in more detail, which is, ERP vendors would have you believe that the only way to take advantage of AI, at least their AI tools within their packages, are going to be to upgrade to the newest version of the software. For some of you, that's going to make a lot of sense, but for some of you, that's not going to make sense for whatever reason. Maybe you don't have the budget, the resources, the focus right now. Maybe there's no ROI or business case for it. In which case, rather than say, well, I guess we'll go ahead and spend all this needless money on a new ERP system if just to get to AI, why not just leverage tools that you can use now with your legacy systems and data using AI? And Palantir has made its living, or it has disrupted the market in many cases by providing that option. And it's not just Palantir, by the way. We're not affiliated with Palantir. We're not affiliated with any software vendors. But Palantir is one example. Snowflake, Databricks, those are a couple other examples of companies that have really found this unique niche in the market that I think is going to be a really big niche in the next 3 to 5 years, especially, which is, hey, let's not necessarily, these are going to be companies that would be saying, let's not necessarily rip out our back office ERP system just to get the full advantage of AI. Let's leverage what we already have. Maybe our systems are working fine. They may not be perfect, but maybe they're working good enough right now. So let's layer on top of Palantir or Snowflake or some other tool that allows us to get some better workflows, some better AI tools, and better integration of data across platforms without having to rip everything out. And I think that's the beauty of AI now, is now all of a sudden the balance of power, the center of gravity, is moving away from the core back office ERP systems. And I think it's moving toward AI. And I think eventually AI will become the new center of gravity for enterprise technology, and everything else sort of revolves around that versus everything revolving around ERP systems as they had in the past. So that's where I think we're headed. And so I think companies that can't justify replacing ERP should be looking at lower cost options to leverage what they've already got, especially if your data is clean and you've got decent data, you've got decent legacy systems. You may not be on the latest and greatest, but that's okay. You don't need to be. That's not your business. It's not. You don't need to be on the bleeding edge of technology necessarily. So I think that's the way I would look at it.
Yeah, super interesting for sure.